Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome back to all of you to this conference, Global People Ops Pulse 2024. I'm Anjali, your host. Thank you, audience, for staying with us this long. We have the last exciting session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box or in the chat box. We'd have a feedback form for you right at the end. Remember, this conference is also being recorded, so you can get back to it at any time you'd like. So let's start off. An exciting session, something that I've been waiting for. So let's ignite the session with Peter Phelan. And his topic title is very interesting. You can't spell humor without HR. Peter Phelan is someone who brings a unique blend of humor and expertise to the world of HR. Peter Phelan is an award-winning chief people officer and comedian who has performed in some of NYC's most iconic comedy clubs, including Comedy Strip Live and Gotham Comedy Club. Peter's work in HR has a comedic twist. He has contributed humor features to platforms like ERE and Bloomberg Radio, and has performed as a HR comedian and MC at major events such as Transform and Unleash. With over 30,000 LinkedIn followers in HR, Peter is also the most award-winning sitcom spec writer of all times. So just prepare for laughs and some valuable insights. Peter, it's all over to you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. And you may have raised the expectations a bit too high, but thank you again to those who have stayed on. I know that this is a global conference, so I happen to be in the Eastern Standard Time based in New York, but I know many of you, it's getting late in the day, so I also appreciate you continuing to hang around for this. So I'm going to jump into some slides, so I'll share those, and we'll get the conversation going. And with respect to the Q&A, I think I'll probably, not being the best multitasker in the world, kind of checking on those periodically, but probably won't be in real time. So I wanted to manage your expectations to bear with me on the questions. I'll just, definitely leave 5 minutes at the end for a real conversation beyond the content. And maybe I'll have a chance to check in midstream as well. But yeah, let's get going. So with respect to HR and humor, I would just posit that of all the pastimes that somebody can have, that HR, HR is the profession, but the stand-up thing is probably easier to dovetail with an HR career than many others. Think of quilting, perhaps, skiing with all the equipment, or interpretive dance. I think it's harder to kind of meld those things with a standard business meeting. You see me in my headshot here with the microphone. I could just as easily be in a conference room or a comedy club. So I think that that pretty much makes the case that mixing, HR and humor is the way to go. And I appreciate your time. I'll see you at the next webinar. Kidding. I think we got a few more slides here. So I will proceed to give you a bit of background on me. So I actually mentioned earlier that I'm in America, but I started my journey in Ireland. And I'll give you the origin story. So picture it. I was 11 years old in a bar, having a nice beer, ginger beer. Now, let's not get confused. And I see this beautiful antique sign behind the bar. And it's from America, from about 100 years ago. And it says, you see what it says, no Irish need apply. I thought, this is amazing. Automatic jobs for the Irish with no need to go through the application process. So over I come to the States. And of course, I had a little bit of a rude awakening about the job application process, but I was lucky enough to get going with an HR career. And it's been a great pleasure. And I've been even able to combine this HR and humor pastime in lots of different ways. And one of my first adventures there was when I was working at Bloomberg. This is the company of Mike Bloomberg, former New York City mayor, well-known billionaire. And his company is all about financial information, as you probably know. So um, they've got lots of different media outlets, TV, radio, and they make their money off the Bloomberg terminal, which the Wall Street and Wall Street equivalents around the world and the financial markets rely upon for the best possible data to make decisions. So you might think, doesn't sound like the funniest place in the world, and you would be right. During the day, there's very little room for humor. So I tried to pitch my HR comedy to various outlets, shall we say, within Bloomberg. So I started with Bloomberg Markets Magazine, not interested. I went to speak with the TV people, not interested. And you might be wondering why I'm even trying to pitch this in such a serious setting. Well, I had some positive feedback. I'd been doing benefits enrollment sessions, and Bloomberg had quite rich benefits. There was a good story to tell there. But still, the signups were kind of limited. So, I was trying to make them a bit more fun. So I started adding some humor content to these benefits enrollment or benefits education sessions and had gotten positive feedback. So that was kind of the pitch as I went around to these various departments within Bloomberg to say, hey, what if we, made it more engaging with some humor and kind of helped, much as my friend Celia Banner here is the financial planner, to make this maybe dry material a little bit more easy to digest with that spoonful of sugar, the humor. Sadly, with mixed results, as I've explained, even Celia Banner didn't go in Bloomberg Markets magazine. My cartoon just made it to an internal magazine. However, when I did the rounds and got as far as Bloomberg Radio, they said no way during the week, but when the markets are closed on the weekend, we still, air content all weekend long. So if you want to take a crack at doing some personal finance or HR humor there, have at it. So and that was the first breakthrough of making benefits material, some which dovetails with personal finance, a little bit more digestible. And because it was on Bloomberg Radio, it had to be precise. And this is one of the themes that I will maybe come back to multiple times, is that humor doesn't make light of things if done right. It can actually show that you know your material so well that you can in fact be funny about it and still quite accurate. And those were standards that I had to maintain at Bloomberg. I couldn't just be talking nonsense. I had to be delivering accurate material with this spoonful of sugar to make it more fun, but not compromising accuracy. So within the HR context, you might be thinking, oh, how do I possibly dovetail, humor and my HR career? Well, I would say, don't worry about it making you less credible, because you can show expertise, true expertise, when you've mastered subject material so well that you can be funny about it. So let's, just take a breath. I know it's been a tremendously crazy time globally for us people pros. So, we've had to deal with crisis after crisis, economic booms, economic busts, global pandemics. So wanted to maybe just for a second see how some non-HR people would have handled the wild 4 years that we've had. It's easy to be critical for these non-HR folks, but let's actually put them in the hot seat and see if they would rise to the occasion. We're going to do a hard target search of every outhouse, henhouse, and doghouse in a 50-mile radius. Your fugitive is any remote employee. Okay, thank you, Tommy Lee Jones, our returned office coordinator.
Wise insights I give, and credibility has not suffered from weird grammar.
Thank you, Yoda. Very wise. If you're looking for a particular set of skills, and those skills would be in the people and culture domain, you could do a lot worse than to talk to Peter Phelan. He's a headhunter. So, thank you, gentlemen. Your input is greatly appreciated. And I would say that humor does not require doing accurate impersonations, as you just gathered. Those three weren't the greatest in the world. But I will give you a bit more context on this Peter Phelan, although the introduction was very generous. I do want to just put a bit more meat on the bones of this HR career I've had. So I was in-house before I became this culture doctor thing, which I'll explain in a moment. For 20 years, I was lucky enough to get a good education in the field back in Ireland, and then came over to the States and worked in various industries. HR can not only be funny, I think it's also a very highly transferable skill set. So I was working in Wall Street organizations, Madison Avenue, the advertising industry, technology companies, and assembled a really wonderful array of experiences before becoming this consultant. I now do executive search work for HR leaders, chief people officers, CHROs, and the people who maybe report into them, the specialists in the HR sub-functions. And one, truism throughout is that I was always able to find a way to insert a little bit of levity to make what can be a very intense role a little bit more fun, and also a little bit more fun for the people I was talking to, not just for myself. So I'll talk a little bit more about the companies I kind of worked for as a culture doctor a little bit later. But that's some of the brand names are there. When I was in-house, I rose to the ranks of chief people officer for about the last 5 years. And why I decided to maybe focus on my favorite bits of HR is that it's a tough job. And this was even before 2020, before all the drama of COVID and everything since. So hang in there. You are very tough people to still be doing the in-house job, and my admiration goes out to you. But let's talk a little bit about why. In addition to making tough content a bit more palatable, you are actually giving a gift to your counterparts and your audience when you add some humor into the HR profession. And there's been a lot of research on this, how there's actually a lot of physical, mental benefits to just those lighter moments, those moments of laughter. Not only endorphins are released, those kind of feel-good drugs, but also serotonin and other, natural uplifters. You can reduce stress, anxiety, depression by those moments of laughter. Generally improving your life satisfaction and other mental benefits. On the physical side, laughter can, literally boost your immune system. And your cardiovascular, decreases pain, increases pain tolerance. There's just a lot of really strong pros to this idea of laughter. Why wouldn't it be in the workplace? That's one of the recurring themes, is like, why not? And just, don't let the cute birds fool you. This is just another quick summary based on Mayo Clinic's research, in this case, used by Blue Cross and Blue Shield to make the point. Laughter, humor, really positive, and something you probably should be sharing with your population if you are in the wellness business. And this could be a very direct way to do it. So, host of physical and mental benefits. This stimulates organs. I've heard this one being described as a roller coaster, which sounds maybe more dramatic than it might be ideal. But it's kind of a good roller coaster where the act of laughing engages, your entire body. It's a physical, a thoroughly physical thing as well as a mental thing. So it kind of engages all of your key organs in this moment of stimulation. And then, you go back to rest again. It's kind of like, turning over a car engine that you want to make sure stays in good working order if you're not using the car in a while. It's a very good roller coaster of disengaging everything and then returning to rest. So yeah, if nothing else, you've got all these serious scientific rationales for a bit more humor at work. So I'll also share a tale of murder. Yes. So this one entails a few years after Bloomberg. I was at a new job in the Madison Avenue advertising industry, and I see a sad update on LinkedIn. Another Irish last-named guy called Peter. He was in fact Australian and lived in Germany, but he had the Irish last name. And he'd been a search partner to me during my nonprofit days. And the update on LinkedIn was from his wife, not from him, that he had passed away. So I felt compelled, before I rushed off to my next meeting, to chime in on this story, this feed update on LinkedIn to say, wonderful guy who did a lot of good in the world. He charged really low fees for the nonprofits he served, and he will be missed. Then I went off to my meeting. However, I don't know if you guys have been on LinkedIn as long as I have, but this is 2011, and the formatting was a little bit different then, where if you contributed to a conversation, your little headshot would be just as big as the person who started the conversation. So, cut a long story short, I found a lot of grieving people when I came out of my meeting, and they weren't grieving about the other Peter, they were grieving about this Peter, Peter Phelan. So it was kind of like attending your own funeral. Somehow someone, a very well-connected someone, unfortunately, had made the connection, had seen my face, saw Irish Peter, saw dead, and had jumped to the wrong conclusion and began saying very nice, sweet things about me. But it was references to how I'd been up on a conference stage, in previous months, which of course, in the setting was a direct reference to me and my small children, citing ages and things that were the right ages for my children. So clearly they were not talking about the other Peter. So I had to quickly insert myself in the conversation because I was kind of, getting way too much attention taken away from the Peter who should be getting the attention, and I was also dead. So my network were mourning me, which could definitely hurt one's career. So I quickly kind of gently chimed in and sent some direct messages to the mourners in chief about me, that I was fine, and let's go back to grieving the other Peter. But I share that story because not every person in the HR profession or any profession considers themselves to be spontaneously funny. So this particular story, I have told it many times, has the benefit of being true, and it is kind of like a set piece. So if you don't consider yourself to be this, witty, spontaneous storyteller, you can repeat yourself, provided you're not repeating yourself to the same people. So, if you ever go to a stand-up club in New York City or elsewhere, you'll see comedians who seem spontaneous. They will be making references to people in the audience, jokes about Chicago or whatever, other cities. And it sounds like, oh my goodness, they are so quick-witted. They're just like spontaneously reacting to people in the crowd who are visiting from cities that they couldn't possibly have predicted. Well, I've got news for you. I've made the mistake of attending the same comedy club with the same, usual suspects of comedians too frequently. So maybe going to the Comedy Cellar twice in 2 months or whatever. And those seemingly spontaneous remarks are far from it. They will always find somebody from Chicago in the audience. They will always make that same joke. So, even the professionals, aren't as, spontaneously real-time funny as you might have assumed. So it's fair game if you want to get comfortable being funny with your stakeholders and colleagues to practice. So I would say, That's a little pro tip for you. The pros are not as spontaneous as you think. If you've got a great story that conveys the point that, in this case, how, your network is your net worth, but you definitely don't want your network to think you're dead. If which is kind of an unusual case, not likely to come up very often. But if you do want to just tell a story that is engaging and makes you more memorable and gives the other folks the benefit of all those health perks I just went through, you can tell the same story more than once. But let's look at another angle. I talked about how the expertise required to be funny is also a sign of a high degree of expertise. Now I'm going to get a bit sciencey again, this time not from the Mayo Clinic, but from a wonderful text called The Trusted Advisor. And this is one that one of my Madison Avenue employers was kind enough to send me to a week-long conference on in beautiful Basking Ridge, New Jersey, a few years ago. And it talks about how you become a trusted advisor to your clients. These can be internal clients, certainly. This was, the intended audience for that trip to Basking Ridge, New Jersey was internal. They were all internal advertising media executives. So the thesis is that you want to become a trusted advisor to your internal or external clients. And this is achieved by moving through these different steps of building a business relationship. And the more different business issues you touch on, the more kind of comprehensive view you have of that person's world, that other stakeholder you're helping, the greater chance you will be able to be a trusted advisor to them. So you're going to gain these different levels of intimacy over time, hopefully quickly. And we'll talk about how humor can accelerate that. But initially, maybe you're introduced to a new stakeholder as an expert in HR compliance or HR technology or recruiting, something like that. But then over time, as you begin to connect the dots across their various needs, like why do they need these dashboards from their HR tech stack? Why do they need this particular skill set? How does that dovetail with their broader business goals? And then you begin to get these insights that make you more than just a product expert, but a business professional, bigger than just a specific product, and then a valuable resource as you begin to maybe make insights that they might not make on their own about their own business, because you got this fresh perspective with your own deep expertise in your field, and this growing expertise of what their priorities and their hopes and dreams are for their enterprise. And then eventually, hopefully, you become this trusted advisor who is able to take into account every aspect of their business when you give your counsel, and not just this point solution. So in terms of the humor factor, I have had the good benefit, wonderful benefit of getting to know Charles Green, one of the co-authors of the Trusted Advisor system. And I can't claim that he's necessarily endorsing everything I say here today, but we have conversed about how humor can accelerate your journey to being a trusted advisor, and how, that expertise demonstration by knowing something so well that you can, in fact, make jokes about it and accelerate communication and aid communication with humor. That's a real thing. Charles has said, yes. Matter of fact, when I'm dealing with my trusted advisors, I enjoy when they add that sauce of humor. So let's look at another angle on how you become trustworthy. Again, full attribution to the trusted advisor model here. And this is something which was transformative for me. As the humor stuff aside, I just found this really valuable in my work supporting clients. So first of all, in this equation, you've got trustworthiness. And then above the line, you've got the things which magnify or increase trustworthiness. And then below, possible reducer of trust. So you want to minimize the S's. But first, credibility. As discussed earlier, this is about, well, I didn't discuss precisely this earlier, but this is really about having that subject matter expertise where you know your stuff. You've got this HR knowledge, maybe that a CEO or a CRO or whoever you might be working with does not have the same level of subject matter or domain expertise. Then comes reliability. This one isn't so humor related. This one is just about showing up and making keeping your promises as regards deadlines. I'll get back to you with deliverable X on date Y, and then actually doing that. So subject matter expertise and reliability, knowing your stuff, and then leveraging it in the way you promise you will. And then intimacy is, can I feel comfortable with this person? Can I, share openly with them with full confidence that they would never maybe use what I might share, say, about a weakness against me. I can, do full disclosure to empower them to have all the details to make a strong recommendation. That's the I. Finally, the S. So self-orientation is where, you seem to be in it for you as opposed to them. The salesperson who seems very urgent about making a deal allegedly for you by the end of the month, and then it turns out that they had like a special sales program where they were going to get a trip if they were the winning salesperson for that month. And it's like, oh, that was not about me, that was about them. So the humor kind of overlay here is credibility, as mentioned earlier. You can show your subject matter expertise with humor. And reliability, maybe not quite so much. But with intimacy, there is research that shows that you can gain connection through humor. And it may be one of the fastest ways to do it. You have you probably have some favorite comedians that you're thinking of. I'm going to be very US centric in my examples as usual. I apologize, but maybe Jim Gaffigan or Jerry Seinfeld, or some of the great female comedians, and you feel like connected to them, even if you've never met them, because they shared their stories with you, and you laughed, and that physiologically is another way where you get closer to a person, is through humor. So S could be a risky area if you're just always making jokes and trying to be the class clown. That could actually reduce your trust in this case, but hopefully nobody's doing that. So you can certainly, if you avoid the risk of S by overdoing the humor, which we'll talk about again in a moment, but use it judiciously for C and I, you can in fact increase your trustworthiness and accelerate that journey towards being a trusted advisor. So would recommend this model wholeheartedly, even if you don't do the humor-related acceleration. It's just a really great way to gain trust with your stakeholders. So let's talk about this connection thing. I, as a headhunter, have a very strong interest in having a broad and deep network because it's literally my net worth. I've placed 125 HR executives in recent years, and I wouldn't have done that without having a big LinkedIn network where I can really connect with more than the typical 150 people in Dunbar's number where you can have a meaningful connection with. My clients would get kind of disappointed if I kept serving up the same candidates to them over and over again because I had capped out at Dunbar's 150. So I use humor on LinkedIn in conference settings, HR conferences, to connect with more people and have them, want to stay in touch with me. So would strongly recommend, even if it's just cementing relationships with existing clients or internal stakeholders, and you don't want to be a headhunter like me, you'll still be able to cement bonds through shared moments of laughter and lightheartedness. And it's so necessary in these challenging times to be an HR professional. And of course, there's the expertise thing. Show your mastery of business parts, not just HR stuff, but getting that bigger picture that gets you the seat at the table can also be accelerated by showing humor in business, in the broader business. And then I'm going to say we have a superpower insofar as people don't expect HR people to be funny. The archetypes are like Toby on the American version of The Office. It's like, oh, HR, kind of party pooper, fun police. So when HR people are funny, it is like amazing. So you can get an extra credit for being the funny HR person. I know when I first came across a funny HR person, it was a couple of years into my career where I'd been a bit kind of straight-laced, and then suddenly this woman who was just a riot and also really good at her job opened my eyes that this can be an option. And of course, I jumped at that chance and never looked back. But um, this HR thing is not without a few rules of the game. I mentioned not being the class clown and just joking all the time. Um, I'd say less is more is a good rule of thumb. So think of humor in HR as a kind of a seasoning or a garnish, not the main event in the meal. You still have a business to run in a compliant, progressive, hopefully amazing way where careers are fully actualized and you unleash human potential through progressive programs. But humor wouldn't really be the HR meal. It's something that supplements, accelerates, makes it easier to digest, makes it more delightful. But the business is still the main event. And then let's keep it positive. So I can make jokes about myself, fake origin stories about no Irish need apply, and other things. So you're probably fair game for some jokes at your own expense, but you definitely don't want to criticize anyone or try and be funny by complaining about the business or about another department. Those kind of cheap laughs might feel good in the moment, but they are not the way to go to build trust, credibility. Um, but also don't go overboard with your self-deprecating humor. I like to, maybe take advantage of the fact that I'm not from the States, but now I live in the States, to, give myself an excuse for having a certain learning curve. So earlier in my career, back in my 20s, I went to a Fidelity Investments conference and there was another person there and I was in a group setting. Everyone was introducing each other. And this gentleman said that he worked for company X. And I was like, oh, what do they do? And the jaws dropping around that circle were very visible. I won't say which company he, worked for, but basically it was pretty much common knowledge, kind of like, oh, Coca-Cola bottling company, what do you do? So, you can make jokes about yourself or your own moments of naivete or learning things, but still remember you're trying to impress people with your credibility, so don't go too far. And then timing is truly everything with humor. Not to scare you, but just one thing to stay away from would be, trying to insert humor into some of the really intense situations, which HR professionals have to navigate. So maybe, at the direst moments in a career or in a business, you might have an instinct to, oh, let's lighten the mood here with a little fun. Be careful. And it may be a moment when, you really just have to keep it serious. Those would be the 3 rules of thumb I would suggest for folks. I'll take just a step out here and talk about how, my personal story, this may not be for everybody. So I'm not requiring you to do all these things, but it's just made my career more fun to kind of infuse career with humor at kind of lots of different turns along the way. Um, there's been things like getting quoted in German, which is great, which led to broader publications. ERE.net is in the recruiting industry, great publication, and they've been kind enough to publish my stuff multiple times. The Bloomberg beginnings of trying to make personal finance and HR more interesting for an internal audience, which led to an external audience. I was on there 180 times on the radio. And that also was a springboard for making a monthly column that they paid me for in Employee Benefit News for 3 years, which was a lot of fun. Again, just turning this dry material into something engaging. And which in turn led to, excuse me, working with Kiplinger's. I did a kind of a comedian of personal finance pitch in an entrepreneurship contest they did, and came in the top 25 out of 3,500, which didn't lead to a win because it was top 25, not top one. But it did introduce me to Kiplinger's, their personal finance kind of behemoth in the States, and they published my material afterwards and paid me for it. And then in the intro, there was a kind mention of the sitcom spec writing. If anyone is on winningscripts.com today, which I'm sure you all are, like never, 3 of the top 6 most award-winning sitcoms specs ever written are written by me. I did a Scrubs where all HR themes, where JD, the doctor, is or the main character is kind of bitten by the writing bug and has this career kind of crisis. And then there was the Simpsons, where Homer decides to change careers and become a personal finance guru, and then another career-related one with Will and Grace. So just a lot of fun, confidence builders, which were also relevant to my work, and you know, would definitely recommend that if you do have any passion that's related in some way to the world of work, see if there's a way to fold it in. Because, you know, if you've got this outside interest, it'll make you more interesting, more engaging, something else for you to connect with people on. Typically on LinkedIn, people, if you want to connect with somebody for the first time, you might be like, oh, we've got these shared interests in common, or shared network, shared employer, shared college. That also works for shared passions and pastimes. So if that happens to be humor, so much the better. Real quick, just to not spend too much time on this slide, but kind of to make the point about it being a garnish, not a main course. I did a Disrupt HR talk, which has been one of their most viewed ever, on cultural debt. In my culture doctor capacity, I do culture projects as in addition to the people leader health hunting. And it's one of the most viewed ever. It's got like 45,500 views, which is a lot. And it wouldn't be a lot for Chapel Roan or Dua Lipa or whatever, but it's good for HR. And then I did another one, which is their most viewed of 2024, but nowhere near the under 2,000 views. And that's pure nonsense. It says imposter syndrome. It sounds serious, but it's all jokes. So maybe the one with a little bit of humor, but 90% serious, which was the case with cultural debt. Maybe that was the right balance. So I would encourage you to think about it as a garnish. It's been a great career. I have really enjoyed working with a wide array of startups and established companies since I, broke out into my own role as this culture doctor 8 years ago. Of course, maybe there's a scenario in the multiverse where I didn't try to be funny and I was even more successful with more clients who, took me more seriously. But you know what? It's been fun. So I'm not actually too worried about that. If I do get a clear evidence at some point that this humor thing is decreasing my credibility, I may have to rethink my life choices. But so far, I think I've struck that balance right, and I would encourage you to, experiment with this, but also remember that it's a garnish. But it's a very fun garnish. Final anecdote before we wrap, we're getting close to time. This is about delivering tough information. So one of my clients was an ad tech leader who was an amazing kind of white knight of transparency and what can be a little bit of a murky ecosystem. And the CEO was convinced that clear communication and transparency would be one of their values. And we did a thorough, competency analysis with a bunch of stakeholders, not just execs, but also culture champions across the business. I won't bore you with all the description of the Venn diagram bubbles I use in my chart there, but very thorough, lots of data. And the bottom line was, out of 38 potential values that they were trying to identify, that kind of communication and transparency one came 33rd out of 38. So it was not going to make the short list of 4 or 5 values. And the CEO had been so excited about it, I had to, have that medicine, have the spoonful of sugar as I delivered the news. So I said, hey, we've got some good news and bad news here. And then I proceeded to tell him about, hidden strengths that had actually come out of the top 5 that everyone agreed upon in this confidential, one-on-one settings and private voting. We want to keep politics out of it. So hidden strengths, amazing. But the bad news was that the communication transparency one was just not resonating with folks, not for terrible reasons, but because they were just moving so quickly and growing so fast as a business that the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. So, I'd say think of this HumoR thing as a way of maybe making bad news a little bit more palatable. So before we go into the Q&A, I've got a few more folks from the non-HR world who would like to weigh in on, how they would have handled the recent crazy 4 years better.
Excellent, Smithers. I've got the meeting out of my hand. They're now resigned to the fact that they must work on my terms. A fair day's work. Sorry, a fair day's pay for a hard week's work. Well, what people tend to remember is that I've been an environmentalist for many, many years. The only trouble is, when you see pictures like this, it doesn't exactly scream low carbon footprint.
Much like young Skywalker, our presentation, our webinar is near complete. Do provide survey feedback. It's how the Empire serves you better. Thank you so much for your attention today. Hopefully you saw that there's some good science behind adding some humor to your HR repertoire. I'm going to have a quick, in the moments we have left, I'm going to have a quick go at answering some of your questions. Thank you so much. You're very kind with your positive feedback. Let's see about the actual Q&A. If it's not too late, by the way, to add Q&A, we still have 2 minutes together. I'm just looking at the comments, which are great. Nice to see some of my friends here. So, Anjali, do you have any questions, or did you see any questions coming in that I might have missed? I see a raised hand.
Yeah,
Kaveri.
I think there is one. Let's just check it out. Yes.
So do I unmute Kaveri, or I might need some?
Hi, Peter. Thanks, Anjali, for unmuting me. You're loud and clear. Thanks for entertaining my question. I truly believe that humor is so important to connect people. And since the topic is HR, human resources, human capital, whatever you call it in today's world, right? I was just wondering, does it really matter, again, out of experience, or I would say it's just a question in my mind, especially if the setting at the workplace is multicultural and like multinationality, and then you have regional settings, right? Do you think, can you think of instances when it can be difficult to introduce humor? I do get the rule of thumb, but anything that you would particularly share would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent question. I've been lucky enough to work in a global context, both in-house and in the new setting of, or the newish 8 years, not so new anymore, of consultant and culture doctor. And yeah, you probably do have to be, a little bit more careful with your choice of humor. The rules of thumb maybe become all the more important if you want to do something self-deprecating, especially if it illustrates, kind of like my examples did, by pure luck, kind of cross-cultural learning curves, then I think that's probably pretty fair game. Where, you know, me adjusting to the US culture, for example, with some fits and starts and stumbles along the way, will probably show a willingness to be humble about what you don't know about another culture. As long as you're not, you know, gutting yourself in terms of what you're discussing on your learning curve, then you won't lose too much credibility, but you're unlikely to offend, you know, because none of us are omniscient in terms of having the perfect knowledge of what will be funny in a certain culture. But I think a little bit of light self-deprecation is probably universal and is disarming, has that ability to connect across countries and borders and cultures. But yeah, I think the rules of thumb become all the more important, where you just have to still be humorous, but, you know, play it extra safe when you're dealing with cultures that you're still learning.
You have one more question, I think.
Okay, great.
Q&A box. Would you like me to read that
Let's
for you?
see. Yeah, I hear it is. It says, how do you move from not humor at all to drive some of the HR things with humor? So yeah, I think starting small is probably the way to go. If you've, let's see, I'm doing strange things here with the cat. Okay. You have an opportunity with, you know, beginning with something maybe pretty safe, where you are doing a little bit of that maybe light self-deprecation or poking fun at, you know, just the foibles of some of the things we need to do as HR professionals. Yeah, I'd say, you know, baby steps, start with a small audience. Before I was let on Bloomberg Radio, reluctantly, after all the no's, that when I finally got to a yes, it was only after I had dabbled with a little bit of benefits orientation or, you know, open enrollment humor in small group settings. So I'd say start small and make sure that, you know, you really obey the rules of thumb, and I can't see it going wrong for you. Wonderful. I'll check the chat once more. Thank you for the kind thank yous. And okay, that was the only one. And now there's no open questions. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for the engagement and the questions. And thank you for our wonderful host, Anjali, for doing such a great job as well.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much. It was an amazing session and it was done with utmost humor. We loved it.
Thank you. You set a high bar, which I strive to achieve.
Yeah.
Okay, signing
Thank
off.
you, participants. This could not have been done without your participation, staying with us for this long. We have the feedback form now on the screen. Please do fill that up for us. We really value that. Please stay in with us. We have another 2 days of the conference to go by. You have many more sessions with us. Thank you for today. We're closing. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Same place, same time.